Hey everyone, and welcome to the third official episode of Vampires, Werewolves, and Hunters Oh My. I'm so excited to have you guys back again for another long episode of recaps. So this week we're going to be covering three different episodes. We're going to be covering Panic Room, which was the latest episode of Being Human, Crescent City, the latest episode of the originals, and Total Eclipse of the Heart, which was the latest episode of the Vampire Diaries. The latest episode of the Vampire Diaries was entitled Total Eclipse of the Heart. This was a really great episode, a lot happened, so let's just dive right in and start talking about that. The latest episode of the Vampire Diaries was entitled Total Eclipse of the Heart. It was a really good episode, a lot happened, so I'm really excited to kind of just jump right in and start with that. So a big thing during this episode is that Catherine is determined to win Stefan back. She's trying her hardest to be the sweetest version of Elena she could possibly be to kind of try to hook Stefan back in. We open up with the girls, Bonnie, Caroline, and Elena. They're talking about Valentine's Day and how Caroline wants to go to this sort of anti-Valentine's Day party that they're having on campus. And they're sitting in class, they're talking about this, and Bonnie notices something a little strange about the girl sitting next to her. The girl is sitting there playing with a pen on her desk and is actually making it spin around in a circle without touching it. This is how Bonnie realizes that the person she's sitting next to is in fact a witch. The first time we see Stefan, he's at the Salvatore boarding house, and he, comes across a car that Damon and Enzo were driving at the end of the previous episode. He opens the trunk, and what should he find other than the dead body of Aaron? Stefan already knows where this is going. He knows what's happening, and he goes inside to confront Damon. He finds Damon drunk and hung over, passed out on the couch, and, he kind of asks him why he killed Aaron. It actually makes me laugh, this scene, because the way Damon says his line is just so, flippant, he doesn't care. Just, he's being honest, this is what he did, he doesn't care that it was bad. So he tells Stefan, well, we hunted him down and I ripped his throat out. I mean, clearly Ian Somerhalder's acting is better than mine, but that's what he says, and it's such a powerful line, because it's that moment that you realize Damon is gone. Once Catherine broke up with him as Elena, and said there was no chance of them getting back together, any sign of the Damon that used to be there before is just gone. Enzo shows up at this point, and Stefan refers to them as murder buddies, which I'm hoping is kind of a nickname that sticks throughout the rest of the season, because I feel like it could be really funny to hear that more than one time in the show. Nadia and Catherine are still working together to compel Matt in order to get information about Elena. Nadia does this every so often whenever Catherine needs to know something. Unfortunately, it's starting to reach a point for Nadia where she doesn't understand what Catherine's doing. Catherine is asking a lot of questions of stuff that'll help her with Stefan, but Nadia doesn't understand why Catherine is making her compel Matt for certain pieces of information. So we cut back to a scene where we actually find out that Dr. West is in fact alive. He's still working on the Augustine Vampire Project, and this is apparent by the new vamp that he has hanging out in his basement. So Joey, the new vampire, is, strapped to the table. Dr. West is working on him. And suddenly, this random girl just walks into the room. Her name is Sloane. Sloane tells Dr. West that she wants to invest in the project as long as Dr. West does her a little favor. Sloane has some blood that she wants analyzed. And she believes that Dr. West is the right person for the job. She also tells Dr. West that Aaron has disappeared. His car was found, on the highway. There was blood. There's no chance that Aaron is still alive. Enzo and Damon are determined to figure out where Dr. West went. So we open to a scene of them feeding off of Diane, the head of Whitmore Security. You know, they're kind of trying to figure out where Dr. West is. They want revenge for what he's done, and they believe that she has the answer to everything. You know, they don't get any answers that they want, and, you know, as the storyline's going along, there's actually a moment where Stefan and Enzo face off alone. Stefan wants to get Damon back. He wants to get Damon back to the Damon he was when he was with Elena, and he knows the only way he can do this is to get rid of Enzo. So, you know, the two fight. Stefan kind of overpowers Enzo and basically tells him never to come back to Mystic Falls. He never wants to see his face in those parts again. Part of me thinks, you know, Enzo's not just going to take off from that. You know, he finally has his murder buddy back. You know, I don't see a small little threat like that from Stefan being what sends him off. Now we head to Mystic Grill, where we are pleasantly surprised to see Tyler back on the scene. You know, he decides to come in and have a couple of drinks at the bar. You know, he's trying to drink away the memory of Caroline, and, you know, it's hard to see him like this because he's so upset about everything that happened between him and Caroline, and now to just see him there trying to drink his sorrow away, it's really, really hard to watch. Unfortunately, during this time, Nadja is also at the bar, and Tyler takes a little bit of an interest in her. You know, he's watching her, he thinks she's pretty, and Matt is like, no, bro, no, that's Catherine's daughter. And Tyler's a little taken back, but I think he's still really attracted to her physically. They invite Nadja over to have a couple of drinks, and, you know, they're taking shots, and, you know, secrets just start kind of pouring out, and this episode is really funny, because there's a lot of jokes just kind of being thrown around here. During this scene, you know, Tyler has to go to the bathroom, and he tells them that, so Nadja and Matt make a fire hydrant joke, which, I mean, most people probably wouldn't find funny, but I think it's hilarious since Tyler's a werewolf. You know, werewolf, fire hydrant, dog, fire hydrant. Anyways, it was really nice to kind of see the writers throwing some of these really kind of cheesy yet funny little quips in there. You know, as Tyler's coming back out of the bathroom, he actually overhears and witnesses Nadja compelling Matt, you know, and asking questions about it. So we're now at a point where Tyler knows what's going on, and you kind of wonder, what is he going to do with this information? So Damon and Enzo come across Bonnie and Jeremy, and they are still determined to figure out where Dr. West is, so they decide the best way they can do this is by forcing Bonnie to do a locator spell. However, they know Bonnie won't work without a little motivation, so Enzo kidnaps Jeremy and is holding him hostage until Bonnie can complete the locator spell. It's honestly, at this point, Damon is a little creepy. You know, the little smiles he has with the lines that he says is just a little terrifying, to be honest. He has moments where he's just downright scary, and it's like, I'm glad to see this Damon back. I think it's going to make for a great story, but I'm definitely missing the Damon that we saw with Elena. You know, they're talking, before Enzo takes Jeremy, Bonnie is kind of like, you know, what about Elena? What do you think she's going to do when she finds out that you kidnapped her brother? And Bonnie's like, she will kill you. Damon's response is one of my favorite things ever. He's just like, cool. He doesn't care anymore. He's completely given up on any sense of being, you know, human or good. And it's nice to see this Damon come out to play for a little while. So Elena and Stefan are at this, you know, Lonely Hearts party that Caroline wanted them all to go to. They're dancing and they're kind of having a little heart-to-heart. But Catherine is starting to get frustrated. She's not getting the answers she wants out of Stefan. She was expecting him to kind of just, you know, have him let her fall into his arms and just everything would be okay. When in fact, you know, I don't think she realizes it's not going to be that easy to win Stefan over in a romantic way. So Caroline interrupts Elena and Stefan dancing as she drags Elena off to kind of burn some stuff that she had left over from Klaus. Big part of this whole Lonely Hearts party is there's, a fire where you can burn stuff from your exes, and finds this is a good time to burn the picture of a horse that Klaus had drew for her. And, during this time, Caroline is kind of telling Elena, she needs to slow down, take things easy. She's kind of trying to rush things with, moving on from Damon. We cut back to Tyler and Matt, and they're talking. Tyler confesses to Matt about what he saw Nadja doing, and tells him he needs to drink vervain immediately. He needs to get some coffee, drink it down, and get that vervain in his system so that Nadja can't compel him. Stefan and Caroline are discussing how Damon has fallen off the wagon and how he's killing again. And what are their options as far as bringing him back to the good side? Damon actually interrupts them and tells them about how, about how they want to find Dr. West and how they're going to use Jeremy as a bait to get it. Bonnie is there as well, and, when this news breaks to Elena, you expect her to be super emotional, yet passionately angry at Damon, and I don't feel like Catherine pulled off a good job portraying Elena in this situation. There was hardly any emotion in there, and that's really something I would have liked to have seen more of, from Nina Dobrev's acting during that scene. So Nadja and Catherine are kind of fighting over whether or not to save Jeremy. Nadja is telling Catherine that it needs to happen, Elena would make sure Jeremy was safe. And Catherine's just kind of like, I don't want to save him, I just want to get things going with Stefan, and that's kind of it. So they're having this argument, and Nadja decides to try to compel Matt one more time. She believes it works, or so we think. Afterwards, him and Tyler are talking in the alley, and, Nadja actually comes along and snaps Tyler's neck. She knows that she was being played, and she's incredibly upset about it. So, we're left to kind of see Tyler just kind of lying there on the ground in the alley, and she forces Matt to come with her. We're at the point where Bonnie knows she doesn't, she can't do the locator spell. She's not a witch anymore, so she has to find a witch who can do it. This is where she turns to Liv, the girl who's in her class that she knows is practicing witchcraft. So the girl's kind of refusing to listen to Bonnie. She doesn't want to help until Caroline steps in, full vamp face going, and kind of tells the girl, she doesn't have a choice. So Damon feels that the girls need a little encouragement to get through the spell, so he tells Enzo to prepare to kill Jeremy. Bonnie is really struggling here because she wants to help, she has no power, she's to depend on this strange girl she's just met to save Jeremy's life. So Stefan and Catherine are here to save the day. They find out where Enzo is holding Jeremy, and they break in and decide to fight to save Jeremy. Stefan is facing off against Enzo while Catherine is trying to, untie Jeremy and wake him up. So this fight is happening when all of a sudden Damon arrives. And, he's telling Enzo that everything's fine. They know where Dr. West is. They're going to go and kill him now. But Enzo gets one last hit out before he takes off, and that is stabbing Elena or Catherine. Before they leave, Stefan and Damon have a little exchange of words that's really heartbreaking for any fan of the show to hear. Stefan turns and says, "Damon, don't bother coming back." Damon's response is simply, "I wasn't planning on it." And it's so hard because it's like, why, Damon? We love you. Come back to us. Stay away from the dark side. But for now, we kind of just have to keep watching and see where him and Enzo go. We're watching Matt and Nadja drive together, and Nadja kind of comes out clean to Matt about everything. She tells him that Catherine is in Elena's body. They've been using him, to kind of keep Catherine's identity a secret. But she does threaten him and says that nobody can find out about it. So at this point, Matt's kind of in a hard place. In order to protect his friends and the people he loves, he has to remain silent about something that potentially could change a lot of lives. So Enzo and Damon find their way to Dr. West's lab, which is where the locator spell led them to. You know, they're kind of both like, yes, this is finally it, we're gonna get our revenge, but it turns out to be a trap. The travelers are waiting for them and they start chanting, sort of similar to what happened to Elena and Stefan back in that, you know, broke down house in the middle of the woods. So, you know, they're chanting, and before they pass out, Damon is actually injected with something. So he awakens, and, you know, him and Enzo are both confused, and they're kind of searching the property to see if they can find Dr. West. Damon comes across Joey, the vampire that was chained up downstairs, and Joey begs him to let him go. So Damon, you know, he unhooks him, you know, he's kind of free, and then Damon murders him. He, you know, he claims it was karma, and decapitates the body. Enzo is kind of there, he watches what happens, and you realize there is a problem. It would appear that Damon has been injected with the Ripper serum, so I guess we'll just have to see where it goes as far as that storyline during the next week's episode. You know, the show's kind of ending here with this little scene between Stefan and Catherine. You know, Catherine is complaining she has a splinter in her back and asking if Stefan can get it for her because she can't reach. And it's just, it's such a cheesy, overdone moment that I hate it. I hated the scene. I hate this little intimate hug that they share. I'm sure for Stelena fans it was very exciting, but overall, I just felt like it was poorly done and incredibly cheesy compared to the skill of the writers we've seen on the show so far. So the latest episode of the originals was really interesting, yet also kind of long drawn out for me. I'm going to start off talking about what happened with Rebecca and Haley during this episode. So Elijah is incredibly worried about Haley's well-being, so he asks Rebecca to take Haley to the plantation and keep her safe until they can figure out, you know, what they're going to do with the witches and everything that's happening with that. Now, Rebecca is also concerned about Haley's well-being. She takes Elijah's advice and takes Haley to the plantation. Haley, however, has some other plans for how to spend her time at the plantation. She asks Rebecca if it would be okay if she had some of her wolf family over. This is the first chance she'll have to really meet them out of wolf form. She's very excited about that. A big thing from the originals is there's been this wolf that Haley's been seeing often. The wolf kind of just watches her and is just kind of there. And this is a chance she's finally getting to meet the wolf that's been sort of stalking her around, even though she's not freaked out by it. One of the opening parts of the episode is people who are getting a tour of a graveyard. They come across a little mausoleum, I guess you would say, set up for the Devereaux family. As the guide is standing there talking, a body actually breaks out of the mausoleum. This is none other than Monique Devereaux. Her sister is Sophie, who is one of the witches who is trying to complete the harvest in the last episode of the originals. And suddenly I feel as if everybody's kind of like, okay, where's this storyline going? But let's just keep watching and see what happens. You know, there's suddenly a new attack on a vamp. Papa is actually found in one of those hex circles that we saw in the previous episode. So now the question is, who killed Papa and what do they want? Haley recommends that possibly the culprit of all this is Celeste, who is, you know, her power has been taken from the grave by someone. So, you know, now it's just kind of like Klaus has to make that decision. Is he going to declare war on the witches, or is he going to wait for more of the vamps to die before he does so? Bastiana actually comes forth and confronts Father Kieran, who is having a little heart-to-heart with Cammy when this happens. Bastiana, obviously, she's a witch. She's determined to make everyone suffer for helping the vamps in any way. She puts a hex on Father Kieran and just kind of leaves him to die. Cammy's distraught. She doesn't know what to do. She's it's her uncle. They may not always be on the best terms, but she cares for him. She doesn't want to see him die. So Cammy is in this bar talking to her uncle, about the hex, when a stranger interrupts, and it happens to be Genevieve, who's working alongside Celeste and Bastiana. Genevieve tells Cammy that her uncle can be healed if, they do something for the witches. Cammy must take the knife that Genevieve has offered her and stab Klaus in the heart. Once this is done, Genevieve has agreed to break the hex that's on her uncle. Elijah confronts Celeste as they're walking through the quarter, and he tells her that he wants to form an alliance with her. Marcel has this great idea that a way to end this dispute with the witches would be to resurrect the 4 witches that were killed when the harvest was done. Monique is one of the witches that was killed during that time, as well as Davina. Marcel really wants to resurrect Davina. I don't know if it's more so just to try to end the war, or if he's just feels that badly about the fact that he couldn't save her before. Cammy goes to Klaus and confesses to him what Genevieve told her about stabbing him. He says he'll try to help her break the hex. He's not making any promises. So what he comes to is he comes to the church with Father Kieran, and they both bleed into a goblet together, and he tells Father Kieran to drink the blood, hoping that this will wipe out the hex. Unfortunately for Father Kieran, this doesn't work. Cammy is still distraught, even more so now knowing that Klaus couldn't help. But especially, Cammy's incredibly distraught, especially now knowing that Klaus can't help. She can't stab Klaus now because she told him the truth, and she really doesn't want to be on the bad side of the vamps if there should be a war that comes around. So we arrive on the scene of all the wolves arriving to the plantation. This is such an exciting moment for Haley, as she'll get to meet all kinds of wolves and family. Rebecca is there to keep an eye on her, but Rebecca gets kind of a little surprise of her own. Rebecca comes across a wolf whose name is Oliver. The two kind of flirt, they're kind of joking around with each other. Things seem to be going great between them. They have this, romantic dance in the woods around the fire that's going, and it's a really beautiful moment to see Rebecca genuinely happy. So we cut back to Marcel, who is trying to make a deal with Sophie. He tells Sophie if she can locate the other dead witches, he will give her and Monique money so that they can run. Sophie is worried that her and Monique won't be safe after the witches find out they've been working with the vampires. So, she agrees to it. Now, the big part that everybody's been waiting for, we finally get to meet the wolf that Haley has been seeing. Let's start off with the fact that he is incredibly handsome, this wolf. His name is Jackson. As it turns out, he has known Haley since she was a little girl. So we meet the wolf that Haley has been seeing. His name is Jackson, and we kind of start to get a little bit of backstory about Haley during this time. We find out that Jackson and Haley's parents knew each other, and the two were actually betrothed to be married when they were younger, before Haley disappeared. We're back to Elijah walking around the quarter with Sabine. When we find out, although, we kind of already knew, but now it's made incredibly apparent, that Sabine is just being used as a vessel by Celeste. Elijah knows this, and he is ready to confront Celeste about everything that's going on. The two share a kiss during this scene, and really, there are a number of thoughts that are going through my head during this time. The biggest one being like, Elijah, do you really think this is the time to be making out with your ex? Probably not. I would not think so. Celeste enchants Elijah by poisoning him through a kiss. He's basically starting to feel immense pain. He can't stand. He's falling to the ground. At this point, we're all kind of wondering, what has Celeste done to Elijah? Once Kieran drinks the blood out of the goblet, it cleans the system of the vervain that's there, and Klaus tries to compel him to ignore the effects of the hex. Unfortunately, the compulsion doesn't work, and Klaus vows to find the witch and kill her. While Sophie is struggling to finish the locator spell, Klaus comes along and kidnaps her sister Monique. She just got her back, and now she has to try to fight off Klaus to get her sister back. We're kind of scene jumping at this point during the episode, back and forth between all kinds of different things that are happening. We go back to Celeste, who is telling Elijah she is going to get revenge on Klaus. And she's going to give Elijah time to save one person, and one person only. He will either have to choose between saving Klaus, his brother, Rebecca, his sister, or Haley, the woman that he has started to fall in love with. Klaus is headed into the square where he's offering up Monique's life in exchange for Bastiana. Marcel arrives, and he's, at this point, he's so frustrated with Klaus because Klaus killed off Davina. Klaus is now trying to kill off Monique. Marcel just wants peace. So him and Klaus face off, which of course ends in Marcel getting his neck snapped, and Klaus being left to continue on with his plan. Unfortunately for Klaus, Monique is a little fast on her feet, and manages to get the knife that Cammy gave to Klaus, and stabs Klaus in the chest. Now, this isn't just any knife. You think, okay, Klaus is a vampire, getting stabbed with a knife is not going to really do too much. This knife actually starts to embed itself in his chest. So she stabs him, and it's like his chest just opens up and starts swallowing this knife until it's just completely inside his body. We switch back again to Haley and Jackson talking. Jackson is informing Haley that their families were part of the original werewolf families of New Orleans. At this point in time, the vampires felt very threatened by the wolves, and Marcel had their families cursed, which is where we get this wolf curse that Haley's been trying to break. A big thing here is we find out Haley's true name. Haley's name, when she was actually with the pack, was Andrea. Jackson comes out and calls her Andrea, and Haley's just kind of taken back. She doesn't know how to feel about the fact that she just found out she even has another name. Jackson is explaining to Haley that they were told Haley would be the key to breaking the curse. A witch named Eve had come to Jackson and the wolves and told them Haley was going to break the curse, and thereby needed them all to come to the city so that they could be there when she broke the curse. Haley is incredibly confused because she doesn't talk to any witches. She never contacted a witch about breaking the spell. She suddenly knows that something just isn't right. We cut back to Rebecca having, this kind of steamy moment with one of the wolves, Oliver, in the forest, when it suddenly goes crazy. He confesses to her that he was just playing a game because part of the deal with Eve was to hand over Rebecca. She's chased by wolves and attacked in the woods, and all we can do at that point is hope that she makes it through the attack. The witches begin the spell that is basically designed to kill everyone. They start a fire at the plantation, which leaves Haley and Jackson trapped inside. And, at this point, we're like, they're either going to die, or Elijah's going to save them, and Rebecca's going to die, and Klaus is going to die. And we're right. Elijah comes to Haley's rescue, and he pulls her out of the fire. And he even pulls Jackson, her wolf friend, out of the fire as well, which part of me thought maybe he might let him burn because he loves Haley and he might feel kind of threatened. But Elijah did the right thing and saved both of them. Jackson has to take off at this point, but Haley promises she's going to find a way to break the curse and that they have to stay in touch. I hope that this means, we'll have a reunion between the two of them at some point during the rest of the season. Jackson seems like he could be a really great character to get developed into the show. At this point, Rebecca and Klaus have been taken by Bastiana and Genevieve. And Elijah, he's hunting for Rebecca through the woods. He's trying to find out where she is. And he's forced to face off against Genevieve, Celeste, and Bastiana. That's kind of where we leave things as far as Elijah's concerned. Bastiana does come back and confront Father Kieran again. And she tells Cammy she knows what Cammy did. She knows that she sided with the vamps. And that Father Kieran will still die, regardless of what happens with the war between the vamps and the witches. Saul calls together the vampires to hunt for Klaus. At this point, Elijah enters, and he is livid. He's raving mad, and he's not doing anything to hide it. The only thing that calms him is Haley's presence, and Haley trying to, just get him to calm down a little bit so they can figure out what they're going to do about Klaus and Rebecca. We end the episode with a little scene between Monique and Sophie. They're trying to run, Sophie's getting to the vehicle, when things suddenly go a direction I personally didn't see coming. Monique is upset with Sophie as she didn't have faith in the witches. For Monique, she's been taught that faith is incredibly important. She wanted the harvest to go through, but it seems as if her sister Sophie didn't. They have this little fight in the street, which ends with Monique killing Sophie. Sophie's body is left there in the road as Monique walks off to join Celeste, Bastiana, and Genevieve. So at the end of this episode, there are a couple questions that I have from the show myself. The first being, where is the storyline going as far as Haley and Jackson are concerned? I think it would be nice to see a romantic story for Haley that doesn't involve Klaus or Elijah. But that's just my personal opinion. Then there begs the question of what's going to happen to Father Kieran? Will he still die from the hex? Is he going to somehow magically live? Where is that character going to end up in the show? And then, the third question, what's going to happen to Klaus and Rebecca? How far are the witches going to go to get revenge on the Originals family? This week we're going to talk about the episode entitled Panic Room, which aired about 2 weeks ago on Sci-Fi for Being Human. So this episode kind of falls into 3 parts. We have a little side story that's going on with Josh and Nora. We have something that's going on with Sally, and then we have what Aiden's dealing with as far as Kat, Kenny, and Susanna. So the episode opens up, and Sally is trying to ask Nora for help determining who Little Smokey is. Nora, she's busy with her shifts at the hospital. She doesn't really have time for it. So Josh offers to help Sally figure out who Little Smokey is. It's an episode filled with a lot of humor, which I was really glad about because there's some great one-liners in here that I think they did an amazing job with. So Sally, she refuses Josh's help, and the way she says it is incredibly funny. She turns to them and she says, "No offense, but Josh's attention span and focus is like that of a dog in a field of squirrels." Which is really funny because, you have Josh, he's a werewolf. You have Josh, he's a werewolf, and that thought of him just chasing squirrels in the woods puts this really funny impression in my head. So Aiden, we first see Aiden during this episode, and he is hanging out with Kat in bed. They seem happy and content. And next thing we know, Aiden is being rudely awoken by someone in his room. And that just so happens to be Kenny. He's woken up from this somewhat intimate dream of him and Kat to another man in his room, and I think he felt a little uncomfortable. Yet it was still really entertaining to see this scene. So more of Kenny's friends have been killed by Susanna. Aiden still isn't ready to fess up and say that he knows it's Susanna and he knows who she is. So Aiden decides it's time for him to reintroduce Kenny to Nora, Josh, and Sally. So he takes Kenny downstairs, and of course everybody at first is incredibly angry. Nora kind of calms down as she listens to Aiden's reasonings behind why he's giving Kenny another chance. Josh, however, he's got this wolf side that's just making it so hard for him to just relax and be calm. So he kind of just takes off. He's upset. He decides he's going to go for a run and try to get all that aggression out. So Sally decides to turn to the only person she can think of that could help her with her problem. She turns to Zoe and asks Zoe if she can help her find out who Little Smokey is. Zoe's incredibly hesitant at first, but Sally keeps kind of poking and prodding at Zoe, and she realizes Sally is not going to go away unless she helps her figure out who Little Smokey was. So Zoe does some online research, and she comes across an old article from 4th of July weekend where it shows Little Smokey and her family standing in front of their home, and it turns out Little Smokey's name is Beatrice. So, Sally now knows that Beatrice Benson is Little Smokey, and she kind of has somewhere to start. At the same time, Josh is running, and he catches a scent on the wind. He notices this pregnant woman sitting alone on a bench, and he walks up to her, and he just says, "I know what you are. I know that you're a wolf." The lady is blown away. She wasn't expecting to find someone who knew what she was, and the fact that Josh kind of sniffed her out is a little too dog-like for me. But what happened? He's found this pregnant wolf girl, which, first of all, she's a werewolf and she's pregnant. And, not even just barely pregnant, but she is full-blown pregnant. So Caroline, the woman, decides to tell Josh the story of what happened to her and her husband, Andrew. They had gone camping with some friends where they were attacked. Both her and her husband were turned, and suddenly, she found herself pregnant and growing incredibly rapidly. She's at about 3 months pregnant currently, yet looks like she's at about 9 months. So, they decide that they're going to do an ultrasound to determine what exactly is growing inside of Caroline. Is it wolf? Is it, a normal human baby? Is it something completely different altogether? So Josh sneaks them into the hospital with Nora and, has her do an ultrasound to get an image of the baby. Another funny moment actually happens while they're getting into the hospital. Andrew asks Josh, why are we sneaking into the hospital? Josh's response is, "We're not sneaking in, just last time I was here, I assaulted somebody." And it's so funny because Andrew just looks at him like he's crazy, and it's just a great scene for Josh's personality. I really love where they're going with this character during this season. So Aiden decides to confront Susanna about her killing Kenny's friends. He wants her to stop. She's kind of ruining the lives of the vampires who live in that community, and he's the only one who can approach her and try to get her to, change her mind about the way she's doing things. Susanna is dead set on killing vamps. She can't forget what happened to her before, that she was turned into a vampire against her will. It's not a life that she wants to lead. So she is talking to Aiden about how, she has incredible self-control. She survives on a diet of 70 milliliters of human blood a day, which is a very small amount of blood for a vampire, but she does it, and she has no issues with it. And that's a big reason why she's killing the other vampires, because they are going out there and they're just killing people and feeding off them until, they're content. So Susanna's at a point where she's determined to do what she's going to do, and Aiden is trying to convince her to change her ways. She gives him, an ultimatum. Aiden is either going to choose, her, or he's going to choose the rest of the vamps. He can't have the best of both worlds. Zoe finds out that Beatrice is still currently living in the area, and actually shows up at her house pretending to be a member of the Historical Society, who wanted to ask her a few questions about her past and growing up. So we have Zoe, and she is She's questioning Beatrice. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. Sally, of course, is trying to feed questions into Zoe's ear while she's interviewing Beatrice. And, finally Zoe's just kind of like, what, there's nothing weird going on here. It's time to leave. Sally isn't satisfied with this. They're arguing on their way out when they both kind of feel a little weird. They turn around to reface the house, and Beatrice's daughter is staring at them from the second-story window. It's a very creepy moment, which when you have children who have creepy stares in shows, it already creeps me out. So it was even more creepy than I think the directors intended it to be. Aiden and Kat are trying to plan this vacation, and Kat's starting to get frustrated because she feels like Aiden isn't helping. Aiden really doesn't want to go away with her, when in fact he does. He's overwhelmed with everything going on with Susanna and Kenny. So, he kind of tells her, we'll talk about it later. I have some other stuff I have to take care of right now. And this is leaving their relationship on the rocks. You don't know if Kat's going to stick out with Aiden or, if she's going to, walk away. So Aiden asks Nora for her help with something. So he's trying to plan this vacation. But there's a lot of places he can't go because of horrible things that he did when he, was a vampire, a few years ago. So he talks to Nora about how, they can't go to the Bahamas because he had previously murdered the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. So he's kind of a wanted man there. He can't take bag blood through security. He, would have to feed off of drunk people. That would be his main source of food. And the biggest problem for Aiden at this point is he's hiding the fact that he's a vampire from Kat. He's continuously having, to lie to her, pretend to be human, and now she wants to go away for 2 weeks together where they're going to be basically living together, and he doesn't know how he's going to hide that part of him. So he asked Nora if she would just, kind of go over his backstory and try to help him lie about the fact that he's a human. So the ultrasound is a little interesting. They're doing the ultrasound and the baby starts to move. As they're looking at the ultrasound imaging, first thing they see is a very long spine. So first thought is, okay, it's automatically a wolf. And then they see claws. They see claws on its little feet and hands, and it's moving really rapidly inside Caroline, and she's feeling pain, and her husband kind of sort of just freaks out and demands that they stop the ultrasound. It's gotta be scary for the two of them, not knowing what she's going to give birth to, or if she'll even survive giving birth to it, considering how large it actually seems to be just from when it's moving inside of her. So Zoe and Sally are having a little talk in the cafeteria at the hospital, and Sally just, she wants to know why Zoe won't continue with the investigation. She's trying to tell Sally that they found all they can find, they need to kind of just step back now, when a girl actually comes up to Zoe and starts talking to her. Keep in mind, Sally's a ghost, nobody else knows that she's there with Zoe. So this girl, Lori, is there, and she's just asking, when Zoe's going to be home, the typical girlfriend questions. And that's when Sally realizes that Zoe has a girlfriend. And, Sally's like, why didn't you tell me you had a girlfriend? Zoe, she feels like everything Sally touches, she ruins, which is why she wanted to keep, her girlfriend a secret. And, it's a really hard moment for Sally because what Zoe actually tells her is, whenever I have a problem, I always tell myself, don't Sally this up, which means don't screw it up, because she doesn't believe Sally will ever be able to do anything right without screwing it up. And Sally asks her, why would you help me find Beatrice then if you didn't trust me? And Zoe is pretty blunt on this and tells her, I found them to protect them from you. Zoe was afraid of what Sally would do without any help and how it would affect Beatrice and her daughter. So Aiden tells Kenny that he knows he's been killing the vamps and he's going to try again to talk her down. When he returns to Susanna this time, Susanna's chastising him for having a relationship with a human. She tells him, you can't have this relationship, it's not healthy, you're going to end up hurting her, and if you truly care about her, you'll break things off right now. So Aiden was already confused about his relationship with Kat, and now he is even more so under the pressure of knowing that, Susanna thinks that he's just going to hurt this girl. She's convinced that if he loves her, he should just let her go. So now we're kind of wondering, what is Aiden going to do as far as Kat is concerned? So we suddenly have the fact that Caroline is in labor, so we're just about to see the birth of what I imagine might be one of the first werewolf babies. So, it's obviously very painful, and there's a point where I don't think she's going to make it through the actual birthing process, just because she seems to be in so much pain. So we're watching and we're waiting, and suddenly there is baby werewolf. And it is the creepiest yet most adorable thing in the world. So it's got a little snout when it comes out. So it's got its snout, and its spine is really long, and it's furry, its face is furry. And you kind of think maybe the parents are going to be freaked out by seeing their baby like this. But as Nora hands the baby over, they are just completely in love with this baby. And as they're holding the baby actually transforms into a complete human baby, which is really cool that we got to see the first transformation for the werewolf baby. So Nora and Josh leave the couple to have alone time with their new baby, and they're kind of talking about the baby and how, she's an adorable baby girl, and they're so happy for them. And, they're kind of cracking jokes here and there now about the baby. And, one of them is, one night you've got a babe girl, the next night, Cujo. And it's funny to see them, laughing about this and making jokes when you know that they both really wanted to have a family of their own. So it's kind of a sore subject for the two of them. So we cut back to Beatrice. She's looking up an old newspaper clipping, which is the same one that Zoe had found that led her to Beatrice in the first place. In the upper part of the picture is the second story of her family's home, and in the window you actually see a young girl who is a, little Smokey lookalike, but also happens to look exactly like Beatrice's daughter. So I don't exactly know what's going on there, but I know the storyline isn't done yet for that particular little subsection of the plot. And I'm really excited to see where they go with the Little Smokey story. So we end the episode with Aiden kind of coming clean to Kat. He confesses to her that he's a vampire, and Kat laughs. She thinks that Aiden is joking and that he's not serious, and that's kind of where we leave it. So, Aiden has confessed, Kat doesn't necessarily believe it, so now we kind of have to just see what happens. Does he try to convince her? Does he just take it as, I told her, she didn't believe me, so I'm good to go kind of thing? So hopefully we'll have all of that for you in our next vlog. Be sure to join me next time as we recap 2 episodes of Being Human and the latest episodes of The Vampire Diaries and the originals.